Hey, howdy everybody. So, trying a couple of new experiments today. We'll see how this goes. But I hope everybody had a good weekend. I had an amazing one. Really, really striking, actually. And it really did lead me to think about what we're doing and what I want to do here, what I want this channel to be, what I want this stream to be. I've done a lot of stuff in corporate world and in business world and with adventures. I did Renaissance Fair for years, and in there I was never satisfied with just doing a thing and just being a thing and just going and doing that. I needed more. I always needed more. I needed to level up the quality of the show. I needed to level up my own ability to, if you're going to be in that kind of environment, you need to use a sword. So I wasn't satisfied with just swinging around a broomstick and pretending that. No, I went and I read historical manuscripts and I found out about how to go and how did the sword get used in history, and I practiced this and I trained this and I ran a school for 5 years teaching it, and it was amazing. And when I did, I became a manager. When you become a manager, you don't get a whole lot of guidance. You don't get a whole lot of advice. Or at least I didn't. And so I went and I put, 300, 600 hours worth of training in to go find out what do you do? How do you make it work? How do you do this? There's always been this notion of wanting more. And when I did some real soul searching on that this weekend a bit, I went down to LA this weekend. So when I go down to LA, I end up in the car for like 10 hours, and I end up on my own. Sometimes I'll listen to a book on tape, or sometimes I'll listen to some music or something. But I use it as an opportunity to. This time I used it as a real opportunity to think about, what do I want to do here, and what is it that really matters. And there is something that everyone has something that they bring to the table. Everyone has something that they themselves are a unique contributor and a unique. They bring this unique thing to the table, and it's theirs. And the thing that I bring is an ability to really look at and understand transformations. When I talk about transformations, you've got transformations of self. You have the various transformations that happen in your life, and as you grow, as you get older, we're children, and then we become adults, and then we have kids, and then the kids leave, and all of these things, all of these events, they're all transformative events. And they all lead to things where we can't go with where we had them before. And this working with transitions, there's some things that are really important. Things like staying empowered or being disempowered. How true you are to yourself. How smart you're being about it. And how hard you work for it. And these are things that all matter, and they're all there. And while I was thinking about it, I was thinking, what kind of transformations are there? And there are good transformations and there are bad transformations. There are transformations that happen where you're empowered and you're enthused and you're on board with it. Oh, sorry about that. Some of those, like, when you're looking at those, you've got, it's basically new. Give me a second here. Boom. Let's do this. We've got these new life transitions. And these are interesting. New life transitions are interesting, and that's basically something new has come. Some opportunity has come. Some brilliant thing has happened. Depending on your mood, sometimes new life transitions for one person may seem like an end of life transition for someone else, because it is. The reality is a new life is something brand new. It's something totally different. I, for some reason, seem to know a disproportionate number of people who've left home to find better opportunities for themselves. I have a couple of people in mind specifically, one of which changed her country and went to an entirely other country to go and find a new opportunity. That's just the classic American dream story, leaving Europe, coming to America in hopes of finding something greater, better opportunity, something that may not have been what was originally intended. And when they came, it was an interesting story. They had it's a new life. Now, in that case, it wasn't brilliant. It wasn't amazing. They came over with promises that didn't end up being yielded. There were opportunities that turned out to be false. There were things that were completely wrong. But after being overwhelmed by that, and after getting a hold and a firm grasp of her life, she was able to take it, ground, knuckle down, and build a new life for herself. And now she's living a life that's just better than what she had before. And then there's all of that goes with it. There's mourning the loss of what you had in the old life. And then there's embracing what's new in the new life. But embracing what's new in the new life is terrifying. It's actually very scary. And it's very... it's unknown. And when I talked about anger and fear, one of the big things about fear is the unknown. And the unknown of the new life is something that, what are you going to do? Where do you go with that? What's going to happen? Where are you going to end up? You don't know. And when you end up in that place, the enthusiasm over the new opportunity is wonderful and amazing. It's this whole empowered energy, and I'm so grateful we have it, because it allows you to leap forward in the face of adversity. But it's short-lived. It's very short-lived energy. It's like eating a candy bar. You got that sugar rush for a little bit. But new lives require sustained, disciplined, driven processes. And they require a bit of mental fortitude. But if you've got that, then those opportunities that you saw, those things are there. But there's a particular kind of new life that comes in, and that's when you have, the frustration. Frustration is one of those leading causes of new changes, of transformations. We can't talk about change. There's all this, the only constant is change. That's not what I'm talking about. Now, transformations are a specific kind of change. They're a particular thing where you're leaving behind what was and taking on something generally entirely new. In the new life case, you've got the opportunity, this opportunity for something maybe you didn't see it coming, or maybe you made it so that you had that opportunity, but it's the engagement of an opportunity. But in frustration, it's when you're we used to have a joke about, I used to say, when the status is not quo, when you're not satisfied with the status quo, when you don't like things how they are, when you're not satisfied with what's going on in the way that it's going on, when you have a dissatisfaction with that, you can either allow it to eat you alive. You can let it consume you. You can let it engage you. You can let it eat you up, because you're not listening to it, or you're not responding to it, or you're not accommodating it. Frustration is one of those things where you know how things are and you know how you want them to be, and they're not the same thing. And honestly, frustration isn't a problem so long as you're moving toward that goal. So long as you're moving in a direction toward it, so long as you're moving after it, so long as you're pursuing it, the reality is it's okay. The frustration can actually fuel you. It becomes kind of an inspiration. It becomes a way to engage in more. And it can fuel. Remember what I said, just like in the fallacies. All the fallacies are these great emotional shortcomings, just going one step too far. But they're very useful up to that step too far. And in this case, frustration is one of those. Frustration is a fueling motion. In new life, we're fueled by the opportunity and the excitement. In frustration, we're fueled by actually a resentment for over the way things are. We want them to be different. And so we're inspired in a negative way, sure, but we're inspired to go and do something else. And frustration has, as a form of transformation, there's actually a trap in frustration. And this is one of those things where I want to help people with. It's when you're in a frustration-fueled transformation mode, there's a possibility of becoming disempowered, futility, and helplessness. When you try the first time and you can't affect a change, and you try again and you can't affect a change, and you try again and you can't affect a change, then you eventually get to this point where change is impossible, and you start feeling like there's just no way, and it's just not possible. Well, the reality is maybe you just need a little help. Not a little help in somebody doing something for you, but a little help in seeing the world in a different light, taking one step to the left or to the right, get a different angle on the thing. See if you could see it some other way. And in doing that, when you get that different vision, then maybe you can see the next opportunity, the next possible. Because the reality is, you need the change. The frustration's never going to go away until as long as you keep pursuing something different. And every one of those changes that you may have failed, sure, it didn't turn out the way you did, but it changed the world, and it is different than it was the last time. Either you learned something, Edison's famous line, I didn't learn how to make a light bulb, I learned 900 ways how not to make a light bulb. There requires a certain amount of tenacity. Transformations are hard, but they're worth it. And in frustration, that's basically your emotion saying you need one. But then there's the one that happens externally, and these are the ones that are the harder ones. And there's two ways that they generally manifest. The first one, which is more like positive, is age. We get older. And when we get older, life isn't the same as it was. I'm 46 now. If you ask me what life was like when I was 13, then 23, then 35, now 46, the answer's different at every time. And it's because you're in a different place. You're a different thing. Yeah, when I was 19, I was living in a car, but I was adventurous. I was traveling the world. There were 6 of us living in a house at one time. I mean, it's that kind of thing. You got whatever job you could to get by, but you had your friends, and you had all the time in the world. You lived in a type of adventure. Now, we didn't have video games back then, so the kind of adventure was more interpersonal. We were dealing with each other. And it was interesting. But then came the day where, hey, hanging out and eating ramen and just doing this day in, day out, it's not leading anywhere. It's not going anywhere. In my case, I took a good long look at myself one day. I just woke up and there it was. I said, this isn't leading anywhere, and I got to go fix that and change that. 3 months later, I was in basic training. I was in the Army doing my thing. 5 years later, I was out. I was taking on new careers, trying to find my way. But all of it was building toward a different goal, trying to build something, trying to make something, trying to bring something to life, trying to make a life for myself. Not in that, I have these great stories to tell way. I did that. But then came this other thing of, got to build something, got to make something more. And I built it. I built the treasury that I wanted. I built the environment that I wanted. I bought the house that I wanted. I mean, I even went back to my hometown, and there was a new real estate property when I was a kid, and it was new buildings. And I thought if you made it, you lived there. And I came home and I bought a house there. I did that. It turns out that the real estate thing had all filled in by then. It had changed in the 20 years while I was gone. But I did that. And now I've got a new ambition, because when you achieve your building, when you've actually built something, now you're ready for the next step and you're ready for something else. And maybe that's passing that on, or maybe that's doing that. You know, when you're a parent, you get to see this really well. You get to see how different your child is year after year after year. But even then, it's not just a different child, it's also a different parent. You grow, you change, your attitude changes. You know, you'll hear parents with multiple kids say that by the time you get down to, you know, the fourth or fifth kid, you're, how many fingers, how many toes? Are they still alive? Are they breathing? Yes. Okay, then it's fine. Get them outside. We don't want to hear yelling, you know, that kind of thing. You get, it changes. You get a different attitude. You have a different life set of experiences. And so age, you go through these thresholds where life is different. You can't do much about it, really. I mean, you're going to get older. As long as you're alive, you're going to get older. But then comes the negative ones, the changes that you can't do anything about, that really hurt, that really devastate. And that's usually around loss. And when you get into those, you know, those suck. Two areas that I think about is well, loss of a family member. You know, I every time you see someone go through loss of a family member, loss of someone very close to them, you know that they're different. And we, as their friends, may want them to be the same. We may want them to be the way they were, but they're never going to be that way again. It's a transformation, but it's one that's forced on. We call it grief, and you've got these stages of grief that you go through. But really, when you lose something, particularly when you lose a family member, and it doesn't even just need to be death. I mean, you can have, they talk about the most stressful transitions that someone can go through in life. Loss of a family member, divorce, loss of a job. These three big losses are huge. What is it? It's loss of livelihood. It's loss of a loved one. Loss of security and partnership in some way. We are wired to be tremendously affected by these. And it's not easy. And it's painful and it's difficult. And it really challenges us. But these transformations, we don't become aware of who we are until we try to do something that we don't have, or we try to become something that we aren't. And in the face of loss, it's time, you know, you just have to pick up and find out what the new reality is. You have to find out, you end up learning what you relied on that you didn't know you were relying on. You end up finding out what you were upset about that you didn't know you were upset about, because things just go away. You know, you lose your job. Yeah, you lose your livelihood, and you lose a lot of stress that went with, you know, people that you may not have liked working with, or people that you may not have enjoyed the environment with. And so you end up, if you can work through the emotional heartache, the emotional pain, really, and you can push through that, or you can set that aside, or whatever it is that you need to do to make that so it doesn't dictate every thought in your mind. You get to learn a lot about yourself. And you get to learn a lot about who you are and what's important to you. You get to find this out. But it can't ever be what it was. And so it's a forced transformation. It's this entire evolution of self. And if you have help, and I don't mean help like the sympathy of friends. I mean help like people who know how transformations work. People who have been through it themselves and are willing to talk and help you with it. It can really help. Because maybe they can't go through it with you. Maybe they can't feel as you feel. Maybe they can't hurt as you hurt, or be excited as you're excited, or all the rest of it, they might be able to show you the road signs along the way. They can show you this, here you have this, here you have that. This is normal. And oh man, for me, I'll tell you a couple of my experiences, just having somebody say, hey Miles, this is normal. This is not, yes, it sucks. Yes, it's hard, or yes, it's frustrating, or whatever it is. Because I don't usually complain when I'm having a good time. But when I run into those difficult points and transitions, this is normal was a certain amount of, well, at least I'm sane, because it's hard. Transformations are hard. And loss transformations are some of the hardest. I mean, anger and frustration, and it's the hardest ones for me are the ones when there's no one I can actually target it at. When it's just what it is. In my divorce, I loved my first wife. Still do. But I also understand that it needed to happen. I don't have any illusion on either of those. It's both happening. And now I'm in a place where that's okay. Some 15, 20 years later. but it's, and then you have losses. You have losses of friends, just drifting apart because of other things, or maybe you have a fight that just ego got in the way, and now you've lost your friend. These are losses. These are painful. These are transitions you sometimes can't do anything about. And we still have to learn how to get up. We still have to learn how to make it happen. We still have to learn how to move forward, and we have to go and do it and make it happen. And understanding how that works is something that we could talk about here. It's something that I've put a lot of effort into it. Now, admittedly, my skill set there is that I handle translations, or I handle transformations of individuals. And transformations that are best are those that just come straight out of desires. The reality is that we're human. We want things. We have desires, and not just about, being happy or whatnot. When you move beyond prevention of pain, when you move beyond hardship, when you move beyond, and I don't mean move beyond as in, no, it's just something you have to get over. No, I mean when you've put in the work and you've done everything you need to do, and you can get to a point where you're not responding anymore, we end up having desires. We end up having things we want. And that is the best kind of transformation. And that's the kind of transformation that I always tried to encourage in my people when I was working. These are career change transformations. These are, I'm not satisfied with how much I can contribute. I want to contribute more. I want to add. I want to build. I want to create. I want to increase. I want to make my life matter. I want my life to be a powerful element in this world. And that's all desire. That's the kind of desire that I like to see. And I like to encourage, and I like to promote. Sometimes we got to get through some rough material. Sometimes we've got to get through a lot of resentment. Sometimes we've got to get through a lot of recognition of our limitations. Doesn't mean that the limitations are permanent. It just means that they're the limitations we have today. But knowing how to deal with the limited scope of what you've got, then to find out what you have and to find opportunities and cracks through those limitations, and then to overcome them, to build beyond them. That's how we free ourselves enough to where we can actually experience the desire, find the desire, and begin to ambitiously participate in life, to go and live it, to go and engage in it, to go and become part of it. And that's fun. That's the fun stuff. So, admittedly, sometimes, like I said, sometimes there's a long road there. But when you can get to a point where you just want to achieve something, and you actually want it enough to where you're going to overcome an easier life. You're going to overcome complacency. You're going to overcome passiveness. You're going to overcome things. We're on looking at Twitch live stream here. You have YouTubers, you have Twitch streamers, you have podcasters, you have all these people. We are in a world where creatives are at the fore. They're on the forefront. But if you think being a creative is easy, if you think, all you got to do is just do this, I watch creators, the ones that inspire me, the ones that are really there are the ones that I know. And I can see through their dedication and through their persistence and through their drive that they're pushing through the challenges and the difficulty to bring more to the world and to bring more into it, to kind of bring it. And I'm doing the same thing. Here I am looking for ways to bring this message forward. How to help people become more than they are. How to help people realize what they can really be and what they want to be and how they want to be. And sometimes it means you got to go and get some calluses on your hands and some sweat on your brow. It's work, but we work. It's what we do. People who work, people who do, who engage, who make things, make the world better, not only for themselves, but for everyone around them. And whether you get paid for it, or whether it's a hobby, or whether it's something that you're passionate about, or whether whatever it is, it's important. So, how do we get ourselves to that? How do we transform into that? That's what I want this to be. That's what I want us to talk about. That's what I'm after. That's what I'm hoping this kind of becomes, is a way to look at that. A way to push that forward, a way to make it happen. Now, I don't have any idea how this is going to go. I don't have any idea how we're going to do this, but I'm glad to have you along for the ride. So, I guess it's going to be short this time. We'll come back and pick it up another time. But right now, glad to have you with me. And we'll talk. I think we'll figure it out. We'll just wrap it up here. All right, guys. Talk to you later. See you next time.